increases, despite the police authorising the use of plastic bullets for the first time on mainland UK.
The Leaning Tower of Death collapses on Italy's Prime Minister Berlusconi, his promised resignation sparking fresh market panic and sending Rome's borrowing costs soaring. Tehran says it will keep to its nuclear program, denying claims in the UN and nuclear watchdog's leaked report that suggests it's building weapons. Well, experts are worried the study is just a pretext for a preemptive attack on Iran. The UN finally sits up and takes notice of a long-lasting standoff in northern Kosovo between NATO's peacekeeping forces and local Serbs who have become used to living in the cage of barricades they erected in their struggle for freedom. Just after 4 p.m. here in the Russian capital, this is RT. Now our top story. Police in London are on high alert as an estimated 10,000 students gear up for a rally against education cuts and tripling tuition fees. Well, this comes almost a year after similar protests in the heart of the British capital descended into violence. Well, for more on this, I'm joined live by RT's Ivor Bennett, who's keeping across developments for us. Ivor, memories are still fresh in people's minds of last year's street battles. So what's going on in central London right now?
Well, the protesters are gathering here in central London outside the University of London Student Union. Not quite the 10,000 that the organisers from the national campaign against fees and cuts are expecting, but there are the numbers are around between 500 and 1,000 at the moment. They're gathering outside here and they're about to start their march through the centre of London. But the organisers do say they're expecting students to be bussed in from all over the UK, from as far afield as Scotland, even as universities throughout the UK descend on London. Now, what they're protesting against is the hike in tuition fees that will begin this time next year, for next academic year, which will see university fees increased by threefold, so up to £9,000 per year. And they're also campaigning against the government white paper, which is a proposal on higher education that will, for the first time, allow private providers to offer degrees. Now, for the students, they see that as the privatisation of their education. They don't like to see big businesses profiting from that. So a lot of the placards that are being brandished today with the slogans are reading "Our education, not their business." And also last year, now you mentioned there that this protest last year did actually end in a lot of violence and destruction to a number of properties in central London as students attacked, for example, the headquarters of the Conservative Party. And so we've heard a lot in the recent days leading up to this protest about the police tactics. Now, for the first time, they've actually authorised the use of plastic bullets at a pre-planned protest on mainland UK. Before, they've only done that in reaction to things, for example, the riots in the summer. So this is the first time they've actually said that we are prepared to do that should this turn ugly. Now, to talk more about this, I'm joined by Ben Beach from the National Campaign Against Fees and Cuts. Ben, thanks very much for talking to RT. Now, why exactly are you here?
Well, good morning. I'm here today for multiple reasons, but the main purpose of this march is an attempt to derail the government's higher education white paper. What the higher education white paper does is essentially it extends the policy of tuition fee hikes that were introduced last year, and it introduces a market into the education sector. The aim of this is to create a free market that will allow private and profit-making companies to come into the sector and provide degrees. Now, one of the consequences of this is the government's made very clear that they will not be bailing out struggling universities, and a lot of institutions have suffered severe funding cuts under the new education programmes. We have institutions such as London Metropolitan, which is actually a predominantly working class intake, and indeed its intake consists of more black and ethnic minority students than the entire Russell Group University put together. Now, this institution is actually threatened with closure, and indeed the university and college unions want as many as 60 institutions are faced with closure. Now, what the white paper does is it allows private companies to come in and fundamentally shift what education is about. If we start from the premise that education is a universal social good, what the white paper does is actually reconfigure education to be purely about the needs of the market and not about the needs of society.
What does it mean for the students who could be going to university next year?
Well, this means many things. I mean, obviously with institutions threatened with closure, I mean, already there are 100,000 people every year being turned away from higher education because there simply aren't enough space.